Welcome back to another episode of Grace, Grit, and Grounds. I'm very excited to have you with me today. So if you have a cup of coffee, grab it and let's have a conversation. There's a moment in every shop when you realize this piece isn't going to make it. You've put the time in, you've done the work, you've invested more than you probably should have, and then it breaks. Not cracks, not checks, just simply breaks. This one didn't just fight me, well, it fooled me. And I think that's where this hits a little closer to home than I expected. So I started this project as an experiment. I had all of these offcuts lying around, little pieces of purpleheart and curly maple, some red oak and walnut, you know, really wonderful looking little pieces. And they were just bits and pieces from other projects, stuff that didn't make the cut the first time or was just too small or I didn't really know what to do with, but I save just about every piece of wood I can. And I thought, what if I gave these pieces another shot? So I grabbed a silicone mold that I had lying around and I dropped them all in, and then I filled the whole thing up with epoxy resin. I mixed in a little gold mica powder just to give it some depth, and maybe some glow. Like something that you'd want to keep on a shelf somewhere. Well, the plan was simple. Turn it down, shape it clean, hollow it out, make a small cup. You know, something unique, something beautiful. At least that was the idea. Right from the start, this project fought me. Those jagged edges sticking up out of the top, they didn't seem to care about my plans. And I had to knock them down first. I wanted to do it kind of slow and careful, kind of let the tool do the work. It worked for the most part, and things were moving well. And then came the hollowing. I used my Forstner bits to open it up a bit. I wanted to get the right interior shape. Of course, I didn't want to go too far to the base of the bowl because, well, I didn't I didn't want to blow out the bottom. And this is where every turner knows that tension. We've talked about it before. How thin is too thin? That's the question I'm asking myself. How far do I push it? Because every piece is a little bit different. There's no formula. There's no exact number. I realize that if I were teaching this as a class or if I were being taught this in a class, I'm sure that there are rules and ways to be successful. Well, this isn't a class, and I'm not teaching you how to turn a bowl. I'm just talking about my failures. And I don't look at this with a formula. I take every piece as an individual piece, and I want to bring out the beauty in that piece. I want every piece I work with to speak its own language to me. My job in this process is to learn to understand that language before it's too late. Well, I was starting to get it where I thought it needed to be. It wasn't exactly perfect, but it was getting there. At this point, though, I'm still shaping it, still trying to coax it into something that looks like what I had in my mind. I've got the round carbide tool in my hand and I'm just easing it along the outside, letting it scrape it smooth and find the line that I'm chasing. And what's coming off of this thing, it's not what I'm used to. It's not clean shavings like dry wood gives you. It's not even dust. It's these thin, almost ribbon-like strips of epoxy, little white threads that just start peeling off and flying everywhere. They don't fall away clean. They hang on. They wrap around the tool, around my hands, around the piece itself. Before long, they get stuck to everything, clinging to every surface, even clinging to me, getting in the way of seeing what I'm actually doing. And I'll be honest, it gets frustrating fast because You're trying to shape something with intention. You're trying to see the form take place, but there's all this extra stuff in the way that doesn't belong. It keeps you from getting a clear look at what you're really doing there. So I've got to keep stopping and pulling it away, clearing it off, just so that I can get back to doing the work. It's slow, slower than I really want it to be. But that's the only way through it, really. So I'm finally getting to the place where I feel like it's close enough to that perfect shape that I'm looking for. So I'm ready to start shifting gears. I know that I need to start sanding. But before I do that, I've got to get into the interior just a little bit. I need to I need to get that final interior shape so I can get it as thin as I possibly can without destroying the piece. This is always a challenge for every woodworker, like I mentioned earlier, to be able to get that perfect balance between thin enough for beauty, but thick enough that it won't fall apart in your hands. Working through the grits, I started off with 40 just because I needed something rough. I needed something that I could take away the tool marks that was on the epoxy, and at the same time, get it that foundational uh, sanding that I could work from. From there, it's pretty simple. You go up from that to 80 and then 120, and eventually you get to 180, and I think I was getting to about 240. It was just starting to feel smooth, where you could almost see the finished piece that's in your mind here on the lathe. And then a chunk of the sidewall just broke off. No warning, no slow crack, just failure. And I'll be honest with you, this one stung. Not just because wood breaks, that happens. I've had many voles jump out and break on me over the past little bit, and it's almost kind of expected. Nobody wants it to happen, but it does. But this one hurt a little more because of the investment. The time I spent waiting on the epoxy to cure, the money I spent in materials, and maybe more than that, the expectation. I saw right from the beginning what this could be, and now I see what it didn't become. But that's where it got interesting. When I pulled it off the four-jaw chuck, I realized something. This thing was never right. From the very beginning, the resin had not cured all the way like it should have. I could squeeze the walls of the broken cup, and they moved. They bent. They shifted. And I can tell you that's not supposed to happen. Which means I didn't fail at the end. The failure was kind of built at the beginning. And I think that'll preach, whether we want it to or not. There are things in life that don't fall apart because of the last moment. They fall apart because of the first ones, because something in the foundation isn't set right. Jesus talks about this in Matthew chapter 7. Two men build houses. Same storms, same winds, same rain. One stands and one falls. Not because of the storm, but because of what it was built on. And if we're honest, some of us are trying to sand and polish things that were never set right to begin with. Careers, relationships, even parts of our faith. We keep pushing forward, hoping that the next step will fix what the last step broke. But some things don't need more effort. They need a new foundation. But here's the part I don't want you to miss. This piece failing doesn't make the work wasted. It makes the lesson expensive, yes, and valuable. Because now I know what to watch out for. I know what matters in the mix. Now I know what wrong feels like earlier in the process. Failure teaches fluency, and you don't become fluent any other way. So if something in your life feels like it's falling apart, maybe it is, but it doesn't mean you're done. It might just mean you've learned something you couldn't learn any other way. Something you'll carry into the next build, the next attempt, the next version of you. Because the goal was never perfection on the first try. It was growth through the process. And listen here, this is important. God isn't afraid of your failed pieces. He's the kind of craftsman who can take what didn't work and still make something out of it. So don't quit. Just reset, rebuild, get back on the lathe. If this one hit home, take a second to like and subscribe to this channel. It helps more folks find these conversations and maybe find a little clarity in the middle of their own process. And as always, I want to encourage you because grace builds what grit sustains.